Thanks for joining us on the Fishing Magazine television series. This week we journey to Lake of the Ozarks for the second stop on Central Pro-Am Association's 2001 tournament trail. Lake of the Ozarks is universally regarded as one of the best bass fishing lakes in the entire country, and it's one of the favorites of Central Pro-Am anglers. You'll see why when we come back right after these messages.
Completed by Union Electric in 1931, Lake of the Ozarks was the largest man-made lake in the world. Since then, larger impoundments have been built, but Lake of the Ozarks remains one of America's most productive lakes. 250 anglers from 8 states are gathered for this year's Lake of the Ozarks Pro-Am. And Gary Carrier, who finished second in a Ranger Mercury Platinum Team Tournament here the previous weekend, believes it will take more than 30 pounds to win this Lake March event.
I'm mainly looking for the bigger rock. There's a lot of fish that were in the backs a couple weeks ago when it got warm, and they pulled back out because of the cold weather. And it seems like they went to the big old buffalo rocks, what I call it. A lot of people call it lava rock or whatever, but it seems like they've moved to that. And I'm throwing a small brown jig. Doesn't really matter what kind, but there's several different brands making them now. But I'm throwing a small jig with a little trailer, and I'm throwing it right in those rocks. And it seems like the better fish are moving up later on. You can go by there and fish 3 hours in the morning and not get hit, and you can come back at 11 or 12 and catch a limit in an hour. So a lot of people are fishing where they got hit in practice and getting discouraged in leaving them. And if you'd come back through them in the afternoon, you'd have some good luck, I think.
Bob Kaufman is one of Central Pro-Am's most consistent anglers and fishes Lake of the Ozarks often. He, too, expects fishing to be good for this event.
Well, Lake of the Ozarks, about the last few days has really started to turn on. The fish have been out in staging areas, and they're getting ready to spawn, and they're getting ready to move up and start rubbing on the rocks. And where I'm finding these fish are on pea gravel banks, because they're going to spawn on the pea gravel. And if there's some good chunk rock in the pea gravel, you can catch some good fish on a rogue. I expect the tournament to be a real good tournament. I think it's going to be what we call a sling fest. I think you're going to see lots of stringers come in up over 20 pounds.
On the morning of day one, Carrier, Kaufman, and the other Pro-Am anglers awaken to find that Mother Nature has played a trick on them. After several days of balmy spring weather, a cold, dense fog has covered Lake of the Ozarks. And in addition to forcing a late takeoff, the weather change may cause the Pro-Am anglers to change their game plans. Finally, after a delay of more than an hour, the Pro-Am anglers are off. Gary Carrier is out with the first flight and begins the day fishing a jerkbait in mid-lake coves. Most of the bass Carrier has located have been biting a jig late in the day, so he wasn't expecting a good early morning bite. But with the fog, Carrier thought he might get some fish early on a jerkbait. However, that's not turning out to be the case. Bob Kaufman is primarily known for his jig fishing prowess, but this morning the fog and overcast skies have caused him to fish a jerkbait too, and it doesn't take long for the strategy to pay off. As Kaufman works this solid keeper back to the boat, amateur partner Steve Parker hurries to scoop it up with the net. About mid-morning, however, the air turns colder and a chilly rain begins to fall. And as suddenly as it started, Kaufman's fish have turned off. Chuck Krim won the Bull Shoals Pro-Am earlier in the month, fishing a white jig in 70 feet of water. This time, he's abandoned deep water patterns and is fishing a small crankbait along the bank in less than 2 feet of water. During the sunny practice days, the bass had moved up on the rocks, but the weather change has caused the bass to back off the bank and quit biting. Unless Krim's fortunes improve, it looks like he's facing a very long day indeed. Around central Missouri, Roger Fitzpatrick is regarded as one of the best on Lake of the Ozarks. But this morning, he too is struggling. He's fishing a variety of lures and boat docks in the hurricane deck area of the lake. Like other anglers who had established solid patterns during the warm practice days, Fitzpatrick is having to adjust his game plan on the fly. So far, nothing is working, but the determined Fitzpatrick won't give up until he finds something the Lake of the Ozarks bass will hit. Two anglers for whom the day is going well are Jeff Hoots and amateur partner Keith Epperson. They're both fishing crankbaits along pea gravel banks, and so far both of them are catching fish. If they can keep this up, both Hoots and Epperson are putting themselves in position to be among the Day 1 leaders. When the Pro-Am anglers return to Public Beach number 2 for the afternoon weigh-in, Roy Wick grabs the early amateur division lead with 5 pounds, but he's soon overtaken by Oscar Jones with 10.9 pounds. A short time later, Jones's lead is challenged by Joe Terry.
Oh, looky here. Amateur division lead right now is 10.90 pounds for Oscar Jones. They're going to beat that? Maybe. Maybe. Oh, yeah, Kenny Williams says 12.50 pounds, a new leader in the amateur division.
When the second flight arrives, Sutton Berry comes in with a limit, but he too falls short of overtaking Terry with 11 pounds even. Cameron Roth also has a limit, but it weighs only 11.55 pounds. Then Greg Lamb comes to the scales.
Holy cow, looky here. This is going to be the big bass in the amateur division, ladies and gentlemen. 7.75 pounds. Get her out of there and let's take a picture of that lady. Okay, are you going to tell us how you caught her?
I can't do that.
He can't do that today. Look out here. We may have a new leader in the amateur division, ladies and gentlemen. 14.00 pounds. There's your new leader, Greg Lamb.
In the pro division, Cecil Kingsley takes the early lead with 10.5 pounds, but he's quickly challenged by Gary Alcorn, who has a limit anchored by a solid 5.5 pounder.
Cecil Kingsley's 10.50 is leading the pro division right now. They're going to beat that?
Yeah.
They're going to knock that out of the way. Look out, ladies and gentlemen. We may have a new leader. 15.00 pounds. Gary Alcorn, a new leader in the pro division.
Jay Halsey comes in with a limit of his own, but he falls just short of taking the lead with 13.15 pounds. Then Ted Thomas comes to the scales with a solid 6.3 pound bass and 4 other keepers.
Got a limit of bass over there, right? Yes, sir. Let's see. It's going to knock 15 pounds out of the way. Oh, yeah. Looky here, ladies and gentlemen, the new leader in the pro division, Ted Thomas with 17.05 pounds.
Joe Bennett has a limit, including a solid 5.5 pounder, but he can't overtake Thomas and settles into second with 15.85 pounds. Jeff Hoots jumps into the thick of the race with a limit that weighs 13.9 pounds. But they all have to move aside when Joe Gundel comes to the scales.
Uh-oh. Look out, ladies and gentlemen. We may have a new leader right here. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Looky here. 18.80 pounds for Joe Gundel.
Next is Tom Cannon.
You've got a new leader in the pro division. 18.85 pounds, Tom Cannon.
When the third flight arrives, Gerald Dubois comes in with a limit, but his total of 15.4 pounds can't overtake Cannon. Then, when all the fireworks seem over for the day, Jim Stamper comes to the scales.
He's got 5 fish in there. He said he had 6 bites. Uh-oh, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a new leader in the pro division, 19.30 pounds.
At the end of a dramatic first day, Jim Stamper sits atop the Lunker Lure Pro-Am scoreboard with 19.3 pounds. Stamper has barely a half-pound lead over Tom Cannon and Joe Gundel in second and third place, respectively, with Mark Jernigan and Ted Thomas close behind. In the rest of the top 10, Jimmy Davis leads the way in 6th place, but he has only a narrow lead over Joe Bennett, Kurt Fisher, Gerald Dubois, and Gary Alcorn. In the amateur division, Greg Lamb is the Day 1 leader with 14 pounds, but he has only a 1.5 pound lead over Joe Terry in 2nd place, with Cameron Roth, Sutton Berry, and Oscar Jones hot on their trail. In the rest of the top 10, Steve Mintz leads the way in 6th place, followed by David Calhoun, Mark Lewis, Dexter Stevens, and Diego Segui. Stay tuned for exciting Day 2 action. We'll be right back. Fishing My Way. Helpful hints from some of Central Pro-Am's top competitors. Troy Akins won the Lake of the Ozarks Pro-Am in 1999, fishing what he almost always fishes, a brown jig around boat docks. But there's a lot to learn when he explains how he does it his way.
A jig is a big fish bait, and a lot of times you're pitching to that structure. And the key thing on flipping or pitching or boat docks or structure or anything is when you pitch the jig, the second it hits the water, it needs to be falling straight down. And it needs to be a vertical presentation. That when the fish are laying in the brush pile or beside the boat dock, that the fish see it just falling right straight in front of them. And lots of times it's more of a reaction bite than what it is a feeding bite. Well, I feel like line size is one of the most important things to jig fishing, or just about any kind of fishing. The speed the bait falls in front of that fish or beside a boat dock or anything, it makes a lot of difference. And sometimes it needs to fall a little faster for them to take it, and sometimes they want it real slow.
The morning of day 2 is calm and bright, but if anything, it's even colder than day 1. And the Pro-Am anglers know that after 3 days of rapidly changing conditions, high bluebird skies do not bode well. It will take determination and more than a little good fortune to come in with a limit today. Day 1 leader Jim Stamper is out with the first flight and heads straight to the main lake bank that produced his first day limit. The problem is, Stamper doesn't have much confidence that he can repeat his day 1 catch. He's fished Lake of the Ozarks long enough to know that the bass he caught on day 1 were only there because of the windy, overcast conditions. With sunny skies and little wind, Stamper knows the bass aren't likely to be there again today. But this bank is all he has, and he intends to make the best of it. Tom Cannon was in second place after day 1, and he's run up the Osage River to the spot where he caught his day 1 limit. Cannon and amateur partner Patrick Priesmeyer are working the area thoroughly with crankbaits, but there's no doubt that conditions have changed. By mid-morning, Cannon has yet to land a keeper, and it's clear that he'll have to alter his game plan if he's to come in with another limit. Mark Jernigan was in 4th place at the end of the first day, only a pound and a half behind Jim Stamper. So far this morning, Jernigan is off to a good start, and if he can keep this up, he's putting himself in position for his best Central Pro-Am finish ever. Joe Gundel has never won a Central Pro-Am tournament, but he's come close on 2 occasions, and he has a chance to win this tournament if he can come in with another limit. He's fishing a crankbait in coves near the Grand Glaze Bridge, but like other anglers who caught bass with crankbaits on day 1, he's been struggling. He didn't have a keeper until 10 o'clock, but by midday, he has 3 keepers, and he's confident he can still be in contention when the day is done. When the Pro-Am anglers return to Public Beach number 2 for the final weigh-in, the amateur division is in turmoil. First day leader Greg Lamb has come in without a keeper, and now it's anybody's ballgame. Cameron Roth comes in with only 2 small fish, but they're enough to move him into the amateur division lead with a 2-day total of 14.45 pounds. Late in the first flight, Sutton Berry comes to the scales.
He's got 5 fish today. Ladies and gentlemen, we may have a new leader in the amateur division. 10.60 pounds for Sutton Berry. Hang right here just a minute. We're going to figure that weight up. Sutton Berry's weight for 2 days. A new leader in the amateur division, 21.60 pounds.
In the pro division, Jim Akins is one of the first competitors to weigh in.
He's got a limit of fish that are going to weigh in here at 11.85 pounds, 11.85 pounds. Hang around, we're going to get to say something here, I think. Oh, my goodness, looky here. You don't get to go to Texas if this would hold. A new leader in the pro division, ladies and gentlemen, 25.65 pounds, Jim Aiken.
A short time later, Gerald Dubois comes to the scales.
And where were you fishing?
I've been going to the dam. Today I went down there, first 5 holes, no bites. I didn't know what to do.
Didn't know what to do. We're going to weigh one for large bass. It's not going to make that 7-pound class, but it is going to take over second place. 6.75 pounds. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this specimen of this Lake of the Ozarks bass right here. Gerald is from Arnold, Missouri. He did have a limit of fish yesterday, and like I said, was in the top 10, and he's got a big bag of fish to go along with it. Look out. Ladies and gentlemen, 20.55 pounds. Holy cow. Looky here. Let's see what we've got here in a new leader for the pro division. Ladies and gentlemen, 35.95 pounds, a new leader.
Late in the first flight, first day leader Jim Stamper comes to the scales.
Have you got a limit over there, Jim? Did not get a limit today.
About 8 pounds today.
He thinks he's got somewhere in there less than 10 pounds. We've got a new leader here. It's over 35 pounds. Let's see what we've got. He's got 3 fish. 9.25 pounds. Jim, you fish over here a lot. How'd the bite change for you today?
Well, it seemed like there was no wind, and the fish I caught yesterday was a wind bite. I caught all my fish within an hour, and I just didn't have anywhere else to go.
Steve Wright has only one bass, but it's a dandy. This magnificent 7-pound largemouth. Rick Scarberry has a limit, but all his fish are small, and his 2-day total of 28.1 pounds can't overtake DuBois. Scott Shelton has his second limit of the tournament, but his 2-day total of 29.15 pounds leaves him nearly 6 pounds behind DuBois. Joe Bennett then comes in with his second straight 5-fish limit, but his 2-day total of 30.2 pounds won't do it. The same is true of Tom Cannon. His limit weighs only 10.95 pounds, and he too falls short of overtaking DuBois. Finally, it all comes down to Joe Gundel, who needs 17 pounds to overtake Gerald DuBois.
Now, you had over 18 pounds of fish yesterday. You got that much in there today?
No, not quite.
Not quite. Well, Gerald DuBois, he's up there about 35 pounds right now. Can you overtake him, you think?
No, it don't look like it.
Doesn't look like it. Well, let's see here. So you got a limit in there, Kenny. He's got a limit. 15.35 pounds for Joe Gundel.
It's in the record books now. Gerald DuBois wins his first Central Pro-Am tournament with a 2-day total of 35.95 pounds. Right behind DuBois on the Lunker Lure Pro-Am scoreboard is runner-up Joe Gundel with 34.15 pounds, with Jimmy Davis, Joe Bennett, and Tom Cannon rounding out the top 5. In the rest of the top 10, Scott Shelton leads the way in 6th place, followed by Jim Stamper, Ted Thomas, Rick Scarberry, and Jay Halsey. In the amateur division, Sutton Berry wins his first Central Pro-Am title with a 2-day total of 21.6 pounds. David Spicer is less than 2 pounds behind with 20 pounds even, followed by Clay Wrights, Cameron Roth, and Greg Lamb. In the rest of the top 10, Larry Simons finishes 6th with 13.7 pounds, with Thomas Johnston, Joe Terry, Steve Meintz, and Mike Neal close behind. Stay tuned for tournament winning tips from Gerald DuBois. We'll be right back. Time for Tips from the Top. Techniques you can use to catch more fish. Brought to you by Ranger Boats, where they still build them one at a time.
My basic pattern is I've been running to the dam, and I'm flipping a jig down rogue banks, wherever you would just normally rogue fish. They're really not on the rogue good this year for me, and I got on this pattern about 4 to 5 weeks ago, flipping the jig in the afternoon. I'd catch fish on a rogue, and I could catch them in the afternoon on the jig. The last 3 weeks, they've been strictly on the jig all day. I was basically concentrating on pea gravel banks that broke into some bigger rock. Today, truthfully, I had to go to a steep bank to catch them. They've changed on me. They're on the they went to the bigger rocks today. I don't know if it was because of the sun or what. I've been catching my fish in 6 to 8 foot of water. Today, they were actually out to about 15 is where they come from. It's a hop pattern. I mean, I was just keeping it within a few inches of the bottom where I could feel it bounce from rock to rock, and I kept the rod jiggling, and that's the only way you can feel them grab it. The fish are actually they'd suck it in. If you felt them tug, they were spitting it out. It took a lot to learn this bite. I mean, it's such a light bite. I am not kidding you. I mean, there's very few fish that are really holding on to the bait for more than a split second. If you don't react as soon as you think something's funny, you don't catch fish. And a lot of times I set the hook on leaves. Well, this is the jig I've been catching all the fish on for the last 6 weeks. I put a cup in the head of it, and I use this paddle tail for vibration. The basic thing about this jig, it's heavier. I can get it out in deeper water and still feel it. You know, the fish ain't real shallow right now. And it's got so much vibration, I think, with the cup on it and the flat head I put on it. The ribs on this Riverside paddle tail is also pushing water for me. What I did on the Riverside bait, I took and I cut the side ribs off, but I leave the top ribs on, and I think that creates vibration for me too. This is what the paddle tail looks like when it's fresh out of the package. What I've done, I've cut it down, to fit my jig, to make it smaller, but I do leave the ribs on the top for the vibration. It creates more vibration than a little crawdad. You know, to me, vibration means a lot. And them big tails do got an awesome swim motion. It's better than pork to me.
You know, bass fishermen load their boats with tackle boxes, but sometimes, as Gerald DuBois proved, you only need one lure, if it's the right one. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on the Fishin' Magazine television series.
The Fishin' Magazine television series is brought to you by Ranger Boats, where they still build them one at a time so you can fish hard, run strong, and rest easy. Bass Pro Shops, where you get more outdoors for your money. ADM Alliance.
Welcome to the Fishin' Magazine television series. This week we're going to do a little time traveling back to the Beaver Lake Pro-Am of 2000. It was one of the closest tournaments Central Pro-Am has ever held. We'll be right back right after these messages.